Welcome everybody. Yes, it's the daytime. It's a little weird. I'm not used to talking in the daytime. I'm a creature of the night. But last night I did a whole podcast, and some of you tuned in. I saw that we had a few live viewers coming in and out, and coming in and then probably quickly leaving, because you realized there was no sound. That's right, there was no sound. And as much as it is optimistic sometimes not have to hear my stupid ass talk sometimes, when you listen to a podcast, you kind of want to hear people talk. So we had some technical difficulties, but today we will be recapping The Walking Dead episode 13 of season 4. It was called Alone, and it was an interesting episode. It was polarizing. Having had like 24 hours to read some other people's reactions, it's an episode that the last couple of episodes rubbed people kind of the wrong way, or people loved them. And it could also have something to do with the fact that they're trying to promote a Walking Dead spin-off series, but we'll talk about that coming up. I'm also not alone. I have with me today my friend and co-host, who's probably feeling a little bit better than last week, but he's here. Here we have Joe Dready Joe. It's funny, Joe, that last week's episode, which was our highest rated episode so far, of the 3 episodes we've done, you were really sick in it. So we have to thank the 2,000 people that have checked out the video in the last week to see Joe have the sniffles.
Much better now.
Yeah.
No more flaky dry.
Yeah, his nose looks better. It looks like it's a better situation now. But what's not a better situation is this episode of The Walking Dead. A lot of weird stuff happened. I don't have my exact notes with me right now because last night, as I said, I re-recorded this, and I thought I had recorded it all perfectly. So I'm like, oh, fuck it, I don't need notes. Who needs notes to do this? But there's a lot of stuff that happened on this episode, and we started things off basically from Bob's perspective. And this episode, finally, we got to hear more from Bob, who a lot of people that are fans of the television show The Wire enjoy this actor. And until now, he's basically just been set up as a guy that would risk the life of the group over a bottle of booze. And in this episode, we get to kind of see where he came from, and that's where the episode starts. It starts out on Bob in kind of a dangerous situation. He's on top of a bus. He's scruffy. He has longer hair. He's disheveled. He has weird facial hair and stuff. And
he's also walking through the woods.
Yeah, and
we see exactly how deep his addiction, his alcoholism is. He's down in bottles of Robitussin because he can't find the booze.
That happens. I mean, sometimes you gotta go on the robo trip, and I mean that could explain his attitude after the fact. And this is where Bob was before he was found, because at the beginning of the episode, I don't know if you had the same feel. Did you think it was current times? Did you know it was a flashback at first?
I had a feeling it was a flashback because his hair was much longer. He looked much thinner. Like they did a good job at making it look like it was a pre-prison flashback.
Yeah. I initially thought my first thought was that it was normal, that it was real time that we were in, and then
we had just seen him. He didn't have shaggy hair like that. We had just seen him in like the 2 episodes before, so.
But it's hard in the show sometimes because sometimes they flash. It seems like it wouldn't be outrageous for them to flash forward a little bit in time and play with where the time period is, because I'm betting that in this period of time, like when we've already seen Rick and Tyrese do their thing, that this is the same 3-day period of time. It's like that South Park episode, it is. The Jubilee, and everything's happening in the same time, and the 2 naked guys in the hot tub checking out each other. All that's happening at once.
Yep.
So we do get the flashback, and then we immediately know it isn't a flashback when Glenn and Daryl show up to save him.
Beth and Daryl.
No, it was
Maggie. Oh, no, Glenn and Daryl. Right.
Glenn
the motorcycle and the truck show up. Yep.
Yeah. They show up in the truck to be like, hey, whatever, and they ask him the questions. They ask him
answer me these questions 3.
How many people?
What is your favorite color?
I don't know, green. And the questions, if you don't remember, are how many zombies have you killed? Which he answers, I forget how many, a lot. He says it's a lot. I don't know.
Dozens. Dozens is the answer.
I lost
He keeps
count.
count.
Yeah. Exactly. Who keeps count at this point? Is this a video game? Do we put marks on Daryl's crossbow every time he shoots one?
This TV should just have a running tally every time someone comes up. 47. 92.
And then the second question is, how many people did you kill? And he says 1 because she asked me to. And there was no follow-up question to that. Daryl just goes, would you like to join the group? And I think this connected a little bit more back to where we saw them before when Daryl was really disappointed in Bob. Because you get the feeling, I think it even more made sense now because it completed the thought that how much Daryl probably put on the line for Bob to get
By
Bob.
bringing him in.
Yeah, that he's the one that rationalized it to Rick. That said, "Oh, hey, we gotta bring this guy in. We gotta do it."
I vouched for you, man. I vouched for you.
Exactly. It's like a mafia situation where he's vouching for him, and if Johnny Depp turns out to be a gangster, Donnie Brasco's an FBI informant. Donnie Brasco's in trouble. So sorry, I went to outrageous lengths to make the Donnie Brasco thing work. It's early in the morning. I'm used to doing this at break. So we come back from commercial break. So that was the whole intro, and I gotta say, I'm trying to remember some of the stuff I wrote associated. I'm reading from somebody else's review of the show, or pile up of the events of the show because I erased mine, as I said. But I think at the beginning, I was like, oh, great, we're going to have a completely Bob-centric episode, kind of from his perspective. And I was excited for that because I enjoy the actor. I think he's a good actor, and I was excited to see what more he could do and where they were going to take his character because there's a lot of stuff. But I kind of thought, I can't lie, I thought that it would be paralleled with we would see Rick in this episode. I'm going through a little bit of Rick withdrawals here. I need me some.
We got a lot of Rick and Michonne in the first couple episodes.
Yeah, but if you think about it, in this whole season 4, Rick was basically out of 2 episodes in the Governor's episode, and now he's out of 2 episodes in a row, and it looks like he's not going to be in next week's. If we go by the previews and looking what next week's about, it looks like he won't be in next week, which means he's only going to probably be in the last 2 episodes, which is when all these stories probably will collide in the last 2 episodes. I personally want more of him, and I want more of the Colonel Ford and the other guy and the Cure going to Washington storyline. I feel like, and I'll say this before we get into the episode too much, I feel like last episode and this episode could have been merged into one, and they could have cut some of the stuff. I feel like this past episode that we had, that's why I'm glad we have a chance to talk about this.
Well, no, the last episode was all Beth and Daryl.
I know, but I feel like you could have taken the Beth and Daryl stuff that happened in this episode and just stuck that at the end of the last episode, right after the fire. I don't think you needed to have the whole them living together in a happy household family stuff. It kind of annoyed me. It annoyed me.
It was like we just had that. We just had those exact scenes.
Exactly. It was
I guess you're right about that.
We had to just reinforce that they're playing grab ass and make Daryl lighten up even more to make his fall greater at the end of the episode. I feel like if they merged those 2 stories and then instead of having last episode be all Daryl and Beth, counterpoint that with the 3 of them, with the Sasha, Maggie, or at least Sasha and Bob story, and then maybe have Maggie be the next week a Maggie and Glenn story going back and forth. I don't know. I know I'm rewriting history a little bit, but I guess I just felt like, especially in I feel like the first 40 minutes of the episode last night, from the Daryl and Beth end, I was rolling my eyes a lot because I'm like, I saw this last week. I get it. They're flirting. I get it. I get it. She's teaching him how to lighten up a little bit. It was just getting tiresome to me a little bit after a while. I mean, maybe it was just me, but I feel like it was good, decent scenes. But I mean, we'll get into them a little bit as we go along here. But I feel like
I liked that it started. It was that we had those scenes, but we had Daryl actually teaching her how to track.
I like that.
Teaching her how to use the crossbow, and then she got hurt. So it kind of forced. It was the injury that forced the scene of Playhouse.
Okay, she got hurt a little bit. You know, she got trapped in a bear trap. But again, as one of our listeners pointed out, liked our expression, scratch-proof skin. Oh, we need to talk about that in a second. Some of our main characters seem to amazingly survive, recover. I mean, I know if I got my foot inside a bear trap, I probably wouldn't be, just be able to jump on Daryl and a piggyback and, walk through. Oh, it's piggyback time. Time for a serious piggyback.
That wasn't a bear trap. It was a small mammal trap. It didn't have any teeth on it, and it only grabbed the back of her heel, which even begs the question, then why isn't she able, like she continues to walk to the edge of the cemetery, and then Daryl's like, okay, now I got to carry you.
Yeah, again,
a little weird.
That was just another excuse for them to play grab ass, I think. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I think they have a decent chemistry. I think they're setting up some okay things there that might pay off. And I just think it was a little bit too much repetition when there's other storylines out there that I'm a little bit more interested in. Where I'm like, and where I care. I'm not even gonna say.
There was an unfinished piece to that storyline from last week that we got this week, and it wasn't just that they're flirting or that she's getting under his skin. It's that it's not just her getting under his skin. We see when he opens up the cupboard, he's not going to take it all. He knows that somebody else is living there.
And I mean, this is an episode I feel like it's different than what we normally talk about with The Walking Dead, where I don't feel, I mean, I can go through everything that happens in the episode, but I feel like we're treading on the important topics here. We'll continue on the Daryl and Beth thing, but I feel like I want to talk about this in two halves rather than talk about it play by play. Let's talk about the Daryl and Beth stuff first, and then we'll get into the Bob, Sasha, and Maggie storyline. So we continue with Daryl and Beth, as Joe pointed out. We started off with them in the woods, with her teaching him him teaching her how to hunt, her teaching him how to love. It's that kind of, teaching him how to hope. And teaching him about good people. And I think here's where we got our theme of the episode, which is very interesting. First, this episode was called Alone. The last episode was another one-word name. We're getting a lot of one-word names here for episodes. I'm a little it's interesting. It's like fear, but hate. They're these one-word things, and this one was Alone. And I think it was based on the two parallels of Bob at the beginning and showing how alone he is, and then showing Daryl how alone he is at the end of the episode.
Yep.
And
Tag
you're it, exactly. And we do have, as I mentioned before, one of our listeners from last week had a point, and he wanted to make it aware. Lawlessness, I believe his name is. That yes, in fact, in season 3, after Glenn beat the crap out of a bunch of zombies, he comes in and Maggie looks on his skin for scratches, saying he needs to make sure he wasn't scratched or he could turn into a zombie. So
right, in the prison, when they first clearing out the prison.
Yep. So apparently, from last week, scratches do cause transitions. So here we go.
Well, we haven't seen it, but she does say it. Maybe they just don't know, but...
She does say it. Speaking of which, I'm sorry, I have to jump back and forth, because there's a lot of bullshit that happens in this episode. Okay, at first, when I watched it, I thought this, and then Steph said that she thought it was something else. When Bob gets bit on the bandage by a zombie, I'm sorry to jump to the other side of the storyline, but...
What if he just drools into the bandage?
Exactly. And Stephanie goes, oh, no, she said shot, and I'm like, no, and we rewound, because the bite wouldn't make sense. And no, he got bit. And she's like, "Oh no, don't worry, I got bit on the bandage." Like how dull are the zombie teeth that they're not going to go through a simple bandage?
Right, they tear through flesh, bone, clothing.
Yeah, but no, Bob's skin is bite-proof too. Apparently, he has bite-proof main character spray too. But that being said, I kind of thought the way we started the episode that Bob was going to perish by the end. I kind of had a weird feeling Bob was going to die, but it didn't happen.
Right.
And I have to give full credit to another podcast. The Rob has a podcast, or the post-episode recaps that he does over there for The Walking Dead. And I guess this is the most episodes in a row without a main character dying in The Walking Dead history. This is 5 episodes in a row. No main character has died since Herschel. I think if we're not the top yet, we're heading towards the top. This is 5 episodes.
Well, I still gotta say, what happened to that little boy?
Which little boy?
The little boy that runs away with the little girls and the baby at the end of the prison episode. We come back, and there's just no mention of him whatsoever.
I hear you, but he's got the same disease that like the Nip Tuck kids do. He's not a real character. I'm talking about the real main character.
No, I know, but I still want to know what happened to that little boy.
Oh, come on. What happened to Sean's kid on Nip Tuck with the hands? We don't know what happened to him.
Didn't he join a cult? Didn't he join the Xenu worshippers?
Wasn't that the other one? Wasn't that Matt?
Oh, okay.
Oh no, we're sorry. We're getting off topic. We're talking about Nip Tuck here. Sorry. It's just where there's not much going on in the episode. It's kind of tough. So again, we go to Daryl, and Daryl carries her after she hurts her foot in the not bear trap, and carries her to probably the safest place you can go in a zombie apocalypse. What would be the safest place you think you could go when dead people are rising from the grave? Oh, let's go to a graveyard. Yeah. That's a smart idea, Daryl. Piggyback.
The funeral home.
Yeah, and then exactly to proceed down the Daryl and Beth storyline, they proceed to not just go into the graveyard. They leave and go into a funeral home, and they hang out in a funeral home. And inside the funeral home, this is where it gets weird because they seem to think this stuff was normal, and they talk about it like it's just how beautiful it is. They go into there, and it's a funeral home, and all these dead people that seem to have already had their brains gutted out in some way, so they're not turning into zombies, or they already have been zombies. And they're all dressed up kind of like a funeral director.
Like they're being prepared to get buried.
Exactly. Prepared to be buried. But they're not buried. They're all out there. They're all in the room together, and they have makeup on, and they look like they're being lovingly taken care of. Similar to the way that the governor took. This is the vibe I got from it. Similar to the way that the governor took care of the heads or took care of Penny. It just seems like they were trying to, maybe someone that's alone, like Tom Hanks on the island, that's turning these people into his friends. At least that's the vibe I got. But Beth was like thinking about it. And maybe you felt differently, Joe. But Beth seemed to think it was a beautiful thing. And look how someone's clinging on to showing the humanity of life. And around here is where we get the line that's important that I kind of skipped over, where Beth says something to Daryl like, "You don't think there are any good people left." And I think that's our theme for this episode. Are there any good people left deep inside us? And we proceeded down this route. And I don't know, Joe, what did you think about the house?
I definitely. The house is pretty creepy. It was. They say it as soon as they walk in how clean the house is.
Yeah.
Finding those dead bodies though, so it looked to me like they were zombies that were redressed, and they were getting makeup.
Yeah, that's kind of
like they had been dead there for a long time.
And I just thought
it's not beyond the realm that somebody would want to continue doing what they did continue doing what they did, find solace in their routines, and now they have these dead bodies walking around all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
When you kill a zombie, what are you going to do with it? Leave it on your front porch? He's obviously taking care to clean his house, so why not clean the body up and dispose of it the way he would always do?
I get the feeling that also, just while we were talking here, a quick thought popped in my head that I guess what they were also doing, and again, I wish this was in the same episode, they kind of parallel the golf club and all the evil shit that was going on there and the death of life and all the showing the horror of what humanity is right now to
balanced with the niceness, the goodness, the hope, all that crap.
Exactly, finding a completely polar opposite situation. They go into They go in the kitchen, they're searching around the house, they go in the kitchen, they open up the cabinets, they're trying to scavenge around, and they look in, and they see all this food kind of neatly, like Stepford Wife, like neatly in the cabinets. Again, to me, kind of freaky, but they look at it as like, oh my God, this is nice. I mean, when we saw the governor's people, when they were living off SpaghettiOs and stuff, when they were living the way that Sasha wants to live now, we'll get to that in a second. But the governor's girlfriend and the other girl that's over with Glenn right now, I forget her name. She and they were kind of living the way that Sasha's saying she wants to live, in the way that seems that this person was living too, wanting to hide away, wanting to protect themselves, wanting to, Just not wanting to face the outside world, just hoarding a lot of food and kind of saving themselves. And I guess this enters a more important question as we go on. Joe, if you're living in the zombie apocalypse, what is your path? What do you? And I'm sorry. We're gonna hold on that thought till we get into the other topic. But keep that in your mind. What if you would try to find a large group of people, stay with a large group of people? Would you try to find food and hoard yourself up with your girlfriend and your pets?
No, you can't do that. You can't do that. I don't even have to hold that thought. The answer to that is a simple broken bone, broken foot, broken ankle. And you're alone, or even maybe just with one person, the odds that you're going to go and be dead soon increase drastically. You need help. There's certain things that you can't do alone. If you get hurt or sick, that's it. You're done if you're alone.
Absolutely. And
there's a reason why people don't, the majority of people don't live alone in the middle of the woods. If that was a safe thing to do, a lot of people would do it. A lot more that would do it than actually do it now.
And it's safe to say that even when we lived not in houses in tribal environments, we lived in
communities, in groups,
in tribes, or tribes.
Families.
Similar to the way with wolves living in packs and stuff like that. We lived like that.
We're social creatures. You just need it for sanity too.
And no, I was just going to say that, and we'll touch upon that with Sasha in that moment. But when Sasha came up the stairs and she was alone in her place where she was going to live, where it looked like that's where she was going to live, I just couldn't help but think about Morgan. I mean, there's the fine line between, again, if you're living alone, turning into Morgan. But that being said, would you want to live in a smaller group, or would you want to live in a large community? Would you want to live like the governor and his two girls were living off spaghetti, having like an endless supply of SpaghettiOs in an apartment complex alone? Or would you want to join an army and search out a place like Terminus, or like Woodbury, Mayberry, or Mayberry? Oh, Mayberry down by the governor. It's important questions. So, and we'll get to that more in the secondary storyline. So we're in here in the kitchen, and this is all just if you haven't watched the episode, but if you're listening to this podcast, most likely you've watched the episode already. It's all counterpointing back and forth between the Sasha story. I mean, in kind of I think of it interesting and at a good pace. I think that was one of the strong points of this episode, how it did flashback. I feel like it was a good equal amount of both storylines and really balanced it out great. And I gotta admit, I wasn't bored last week, but I watched the episode with somebody, and I've talked to a couple people that last week's episode were like, that's just too much of two people. I don't want to just see the two of them. I don't want to just see.
Yeah, I heard a lot of people say that too, but I found a lot of good things about that. A lot more good things about that episode than the fact that it was just two people. I like that.
I think you and I like that because we like long tone episodic television that is based around like character development. And I mean, you're into Babylon 5, I'm into Deep Space Nine. They're two of the greatest series in the world of doing that, of developing characters over the long haul and spending whole episodes or whole 3 or 4 episode arcs on one character's storyline and how that progresses. A lot of people, especially the people that watch The Walking Dead right now, because it's so mainstream, don't want to see that. They want to see bam, 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 action, 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 action. Yep. I think that's why it's important, and I mentioned it briefly at the beginning, that I think these episodes that we've seen in the second half, back half of season 4, and even the beginning half with the governor a little bit, was the hint in a sense, almost like the pilot of showing what the Walking Dead spin-off series is going to be, and because that's happening. There's going to be a second Walking Dead series. I don't know if it's going to be based
starring Daryl Reeves in the Marauding Bunch.
Maybe, or what it does is once they get to Washington, takes up the story from Washington on. I mean, I'm not familiar enough with the comics. My knowledge of the comic books kind of stops with the Woodbury storyline and the prison stuff. Yep. Everything else that happens, I'm completely ignorant to what is going to happen in Terminus. I'm completely ignorant to what's going to happen with the Washington storyline, as I did find out that this is part of the comics. I'm kind of spoiled myself with that a little bit, knowing that I'm pretty sure there isn't a cure in the comics at this point, so I'm pretty sure that goes nowhere, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize that there's probably not going to be a cure anytime soon. But
The faster there's a cure, the faster the series ends.
Exactly. And this is one of those series, unlike The Walking Dead, unlike Breaking Bad, unlike some other series that are on TV, like a show like True Detective, I've even heard, has like a set amount of time. Certain shows have, or Sons of Anarchy even, have certain amounts of times that the show is based around and aren't going to really progress further than that. Maybe one extra season than they have to. Like something like Sons of Anarchy and How I Met Your Mother are two examples of shows that had a set amount of, or had a timeline but decided to add one extra season. Sons of Anarchy was supposed to be, this past season was the last season, but Sutter decided to do one extra. So How I Met Your Mother last season was supposed to be the last season, and they added one extra. And in both cases,
and you can feel it. You can feel it in both, that it feels drawn out.
Yes, and
I feel extra long and like, come on, just get to it already.
Especially last season of Sons of Anarchy, it feels like a season that didn't have to happen, that could have happened in 2 episodes of a longer season. That whole story could have happened. And in How I Met Your Mother, I don't know how much of a fan of that show you are, this whole last season has been basically over the course of 3 days, just stretched out. And it does have some gems in it, mainly when they flash back to stories about the mother, but really what's going on in the show isn't very good. And I feel like something like The Walking Dead's not the same, though, in the sense that this could go on forever. They could just keep spinning these yarns and spinning the yarns of different storylines of where different people are. I like to also right now thank our viewer or anyone that's passing through. We don't usually have live viewers as we record this right to YouTube for prosperity. But if any of you people that pass through have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat room, and we will address them at the end of the show if you have any questions. And by all means, we record these live on Sunday evenings right after the episode, Eastern Standard Time, at around 10:30 p.m. So if you ever want to check out the live show during that period, please go ahead and do that. So write your questions in the chat room right now as comments, and we will answer them at the end. See, wherever I'm writing, we'll be starting soon. I'm just going to say hi to you. Hi, so you'll know where to type. So that's where you can type. Anyways, so we're going back to Daryl and Beth here for a second. We go to Daryl and Beth. They're in the house, and they find the stacks of food, and that's really creepy stacks of food. Very, very, very creepy stacks of food.
Pig's feet, jelly, peanut butter, and Coke.
A white trash Thanksgiving, baby. A white trash Thanksgiving. Or white trash dream. I forget his exact words.
I think it's a breakfast or brunch. White trash brunch.
And I'm a little upset we never got to see them eat the pig's feet. I was looking forward to
well, they had them in front of them. They were just gone by the time they came back to that. The table was empty.
So basically, at the end of all this, Daryl decides that that someone's been living here, and he's not going to take all the food. He's only going to take some of it because he's a good person, or something like. Or he doesn't say that because he's like I'm just going to do it because it's the right thing to do. And then Beth turns to him, and again, this is our cheesy love stuff that they play more freaking grab ass. And she's like, "Oh my God, Daryl Dixon, you are a good person." Oh, dun, dun. And it was like. And I might be distracting when this stuff happened, but it doesn't matter. It's all one big scene with them in this episode. And she goes something like, "Where did you learn that? Since when are you that type of person? I thought you don't trust people. I thought you're a bad person."
Yeah, I told you there were good people left. You're one of the good people.
And how did you learn how to be a good person? And then they just looked at each other like they were gonna kiss.
Yeah, there was a couple of those kind of looks that they exchanged.
Yeah, it was disgusting. and so in the first evening, just get that over with until we get to the next morning with the two of them. Daryl.
Hold on. I just got to say this. She's supposed to be 17, and he's just younger than Merle, but like the actor, he's actually 45 years old.
Yeah, but the actor,
not only could she be his kid, but Maggie could be his kid too.
In fairness, though, the actress who plays Beth is 28.
Is what?
28 years old.
28. Okay.
So she's looking good for 28, I gotta say. But she's 28. So I think in the comics, the Green kids are very, very young. But I get a feeling, and I want to say this was mentioned on The Talking Dead at some point in time. Excuse me. But I think Greg Nicotero said that, well, in the show, we kind of had to make them a little bit older. Or I might be crossing that with Game of Thrones, actually. Excuse me. Because I know I heard that about Game of Thrones, that they made the Stark daughters older on the show than in the books because like some stuff's just creepy. Or with Daenerys too, they made her much older. They made her like 17 on the show when she gets not
13, right? 14.
Yeah, knocked up by the Klingon warrior over there, who's coming back this season. But we'll get to Game of Thrones later. So Daryl goes to sleep in a coffin. And this is the second time that this has happened, and there's a lot of, and I don't want, if any females are listening, please don't have heart attacks, but I keep getting this Daryl's dead by the end of the season vibe. I think that they're hinting at it. This whole storyline with Daryl and learning that he's a good person and all this emotional stuff that happened to him and him loving Beth and their interactions mixed with the fact of him sleeping in a coffin, and her saying, "Daryl Dixon, you're going to be the last one of us alive," all make me feel
foreshadowing it all.
Yeah, it feels really foreshadowy of him dying. I mean, it could, again, I could be way off, but it just
and then with the clock.
Yeah, exactly. With just everything, him facing his demons of his past and getting over it, because I hate to say it like this, it doesn't seem like. It seems like every place that Daryl's character could go emotionally, they've went there. Have him deal with Merle coming back, did it. Have him deal with becoming a loner again and realizing that maybe that the people of the prison weren't his family. Forget that. Beth handled that, and now Daryl Dixon's as emotionally sensitive as possible. I mean, we'll get to the end of the episode in a second, but you know what I'm saying. It's a little. There's not much farther they can have him go after he's reunited with everybody. It just seems like the only other place he can go is maybe have these new people he's with kill him at some point when he goes back with the I mean, we'll get to Hale in a second. So we get with Beth, and the next morning Beth's playing the piano, doing her best American Idol audition, and like being like, "Daryl, I thought you were annoyed with my singing." "Oh no, I'll just play it. I don't got a goddamn jukebox. Just keep playing."
Yep.
And he falls asleep to the sounds of Beth singing, the sounds of silence of Beth singing. And they wake up the next morning after we cut back and forth, and they're having breakfast, and it's all family, Ozzy and Harriet. "Oh, and Beth's leaving a note for the people. Oh, we're going to leave a note for these people and thank them for letting us eat their food and sleep in their coffins and stuff." And this is where Daryl starts looking at Beth like she's got some childbearing hips. And
like, what if we don't leave? What if we stay and make a life here?
Yeah, and get into that bedroom and make me some babies, woman. I don't know. I think this is when Daryl's starting to really come to grips with. And I hate, like, if they weren't pushing it so much, I wouldn't be talking about it so much. But I feel like the romance thing was shoved down our faces 2 episodes in a row, so we're supposed to understand that these guys are in love now. Which
well, no, just that Daryl is, just that everybody's capable of love. That there is still love. That we were supposed to, like, it really is very ominous for his life. We're supposed to now really care for him. We're giving him a third dimension. Mm-hmm. Like.
It's just, and we're opening up this story to so many new characters. It just feels like.
And tell me, Hale isn't like, hey, just like his older brother.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And exactly, it's going to turn into the same sort of situation. And don't. Even right down to the way he was funny and the funny cracks he made at the end. He was very Merle-like. And I sense suicidal women from the streets at the end of the season. I sense the girls crying. I sense lots of tears coming. Lots of tears.
They'll lose a lot of people by getting rid of Daryl. But I got to understand, it's got to be kind of hard to trying to follow the script of the comic books and writing in a new character in a third dimension, a second viewpoint, and character into it all. It can get kind of tricky. And it can change the story enough where it makes it difficult to get back to.
No, you're absolutely right, especially where they're very vocally saying that at this point they're trying to stay more true to the comics, unlike they were in the second two seasons, second and third seasons. They're like, we're trying to get back to sticking to the comic books at least for the completion of a couple of these storylines. So we will see, and that's another point of why Daryl's days might be numbered, or he might be off with some other group or attached to a different group instead of in our main story. So we'll see about that.
That might be why they're doing this with Rick. They're testing how it goes with not having one of our main characters for a couple of episodes in a row. I
know, and I feel like, I can't lie, in this episode felt the Rick missing. Last episode I didn't think about it much. In this episode I felt like I wanted a little bit of Rick somewhere. And I guess that was maybe just me, because to me, Rick's the main character of the show, and having a television show without the main character for 3 episodes is just weird to me. And again, 3 episodes is, I'm counting next week, if he's not in next week too, which it looks like he might not be from everything we've seen about next week so far. Bless you. So at the end of this episode, or at the end of the Daryl and Beth storyline, Daryl, right as they're at the breakfast table talking about starting a family, you hear a little rustling at the door in one of the traps that Daryl set up. And it's a little doggy. Yeah, it's a great dog, which adds a different question about how many pets and how many dogs are out there. It's tough for human. And again, I'm stealing this question from another person's podcast, but it was a good point. I know dogs are getting hungry and sick, but for the most part, dogs are tough for humans to catch if a dog doesn't want you to catch them. There are probably a good amount of dogs out there here and there. They're different than some bigger animals like bears and horses and stuff. I mean, horses would probably be tough too. But dogs are sly and smart. I'm sure there's some strays out there. But there lies a different question where we come to later, because a few minutes after that happens, or a flash in time after that happens, after we go to the other storyline and come back, we hear the sound again, and this time, because Beth is like, at the end of the last scene, is like, oh, can we have a dog? Can we please have a doggy? Let's let the doggy. We hear the dog again, and then Daryl opens the door, and he doesn't
even look. He completely lets his guard down. I mean, you can see movement through those slats.
Exactly, and he opens the door, and an army of zombies come marching in. To me, what that felt like, and I don't know if you heard this too, and I watched it twice, so I heard this twice.
The dog bark?
The dog bark right after that. So the zombies didn't eat the dog. So the dog was there to bait them, and it seemed to me that seemed like a Governor situation.
The zombie bomb.
A zombie bomb, yeah. And then the zombie bomb comes in, and Daryl does his superhero Batman
stuff. Because the cans never jiggled on the porch.
Exactly. It was weird.
It was just the dog bark.
Exactly. And then the zombie situation happens, and Daryl gets attacked by a bunch of zombies, and does his superhero Indiana Jones, I'm Super Daryl, I'm never gonna get caught thing, and somehow gets out of like the most ridiculous situation ever that he got out of that. But okay, he gets out, he's Daryl, and he gets out, and he runs outside just in time to see a car driving off with Beth. And at that
presumably with Beth, because the bag is strewn about on the floor.
What I immediately thought in that moment, I didn't go to what my thought is now about it. My first thought was it was Hale.
Me too.
This is all in the same area, and Rick fucked with him, and he realized that someone was in there, and he went driving around looking for anybody in the area and found Beth on the side of the street and goes, oh, she's good for raping, or maybe she's the person that was in the house, and grabbed her and brought her in. That was my initial thought. But then obviously right after that, Daryl, we flash over to the other storyline that we're going to talk about in a second, and Daryl, we see Daryl running after the car. And I'm sorry, if he cared, he would have kept running. He stopped caring. He
ran for miles. He came to a crossroads. You can't track on pavement. He gave up.
Well,
he was sad.
If Forrest was still running, he would be going after Jenny. If that was Jenny and he was Tom Hanks, speaking of another Tom Hanks reference, sorry for the second Tom Hanks reference in the show, he kept running. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, so Daryl, in another foreshadowing Daryl's death moment, he drops his sword like Mel Gibson in Braveheart, dropping the giant blade. He drops the crossbow to the ground. Boom. It falls. And Daryl is sad. It's the end for our hero. It looks like
He lost all that hope that he had just built up over the last 2 episodes, came crashing down.
And then just when we don't think things could get worse, we get an army of what are the people called in the north? And because my joke's not going to.
The others.
Yeah, we get an army. We get the army of the others with the bow and arrows.
Or the whites.
Or the whites, yeah, surrounding them with all seem to have bow and arrows or other kinds of weapons. It looks like. Oh no, a couple of med guns. And Daryl's on the ground, and this is Hale. So obviously it wasn't Hale that kidnapped Beth. And it's Hale and his group of people.
I hope Daryl kills them all in the middle of the night and goes back about his business.
He should. He really should. He should get a bad vibe. He should realize. I mean, he's already come to grips with all his Merle shit, so he should realize that these people are nothing but trouble. So anyway,
he knows that. He knows that immediately. As soon as the guy behind him says, "I got dibs on his coat, on his vest."
Exactly. Once he says that, and I forget what Hale said to prompt him, but Hale said something evil to him, and Daryl.
Why hurt yourself when you can hurt other people?
Yeah, so he took him up on the offer and he punched Hale in the face, and then pulled out his trusty crossbow and put it in Hale's face, and then we had a Mexican standoff with all the guys going, "If you shoot him, we're gonna shoot you. Let's just shoot him down. I'm not gonna shoot you. If you shoot me, I shoot you, and you shoot me, and shoot me." And then Hale threw in some funny lines like, "Don't be a dumb horse's butt. If you want to stick it out your rectum," I forget exactly what he says, but he shows himself to be very Merle, as Joe put it earlier. He makes a funny ass comment, a couple of silly wise ass remarks, and basically tells him, what Joe's just said. Why hurt others when you? Why hurt yourself when you can hurt others? Come with us. And after he punches him, Hale starts laughing. He likes it. He thinks of him as one of the gang. You know, it's one of those things you just see it. It's a TV idiom of things that happen. He gained the bad guy's respect by not giving a fuck and saying "fuck you" and and the episode ends with them kind of well, that's not how it ends, but it ends, that part of the storyline ends with them walking off together. So now Daryl's with this group of yokels that we've seen are a bunch of fucking dumbasses that choke each other out for the last bed. So he's not, and
are looking for women to rape.
You know, looking for, who knows? Yeah, exactly. Or looking for something. Or looking for.
So how's that going to go when that group runs across Beth and whoever Beth just hooked up got kidnapped by? And they kill everybody and then try to rape Beth, so Daryl kills them all.
Unless
or goes along with it.
Just to connect to the Beth thing, to me, what I think it's showing is that it was whoever was living in the house, like, and had the dog and kind of was setting up,
sussing out the situation, seeing what was going on, who was in the house,
exactly.
Set the dog up.
And who knows, it also could be people from Terminus that were driving by that saw her, and the dog thing could not be connected. And it could just be that the dog got away and distracted Daryl, you know, was trying to warn them or something. Who knows? Like, it could be that car's driving Beth to Terminus, and we're going to see her there. So, I mean, who knows what's going on. I doubt this is going to be a Sophia situation, that this is the last we see Beth. I think this isn't the last we see Beth. It may be the last. It may be the beginning of the end for Daryl. I kind of thought Daryl was going to die. When he was surrounded like that, I thought the episode might end with a gunshot and not knowing whether Daryl dies or not.
Yeah.
But
glad they didn't do that.
Or in the other. Yeah, me too. I fucking hate. Unless it's Breaking Bad. I hate those kind of endings. The last couple of episodes of Breaking Bad did stuff like that and made it work. But Breaking Bad's the exception
to most rules.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I think, especially with that episode. That show can pull stuff off that other shows can't. Anyways, back to Walking Dead. So our secondary storyline was with Maggie. I think that's everything we need to talk about. Talk about the Daryl and.
Yeah, pretty much.
So the other storyline, and this will be a little bit quicker because there's less to talk about here, is with with Maggie, Bob, and Sasha. We already talked about the beginning of the episode, which is a Bob flashback. So I thought it was going to be a little bit more Bob, but it was really a split of the three of them and a kind of a focus on basically the three of them. So we flash back after the opening intro. The first we see of them is our preview. Excuse me, the same shot we saw in our preview clips of the three of them standing in a Triforce in the fog, fighting off zombies. And they kick some ass, they fight off a bunch of zombies, and at the end of that all, they're all resting in camp,
I just gotta say one thing.
Mhm.
I wish that fog scene was longer.
Yeah,
Not
me too.
necessarily just them back to back, but I wish we had seen them traveling through the fog, not just a quick let's fight a bunch of zombies coming at us through the
Yeah,
fog.
it seemed like there was a couple of things in this part of the storyline that was a little bit. I feel like as much as I can say the bad things about the Daryl and Beth storyline, like I could have dealt with all this stuff last week because I think it would have made last week's episode even better and connected it even more to the Hale stuff because the Hale stuff would have been in the episode before. That's another reason, because it would have even connected it more with Hale. Because oh my God, that's the guy from the last episode. I'm sure a few
Right,
people.
they could have ended the Beth and Daryl episode the same way they ended with Beth and Daryl yesterday and
At the end
saved
of
us
the
a
fire.
bunch of time.
Yeah, at the end of the fire, like she runs off ahead of him, and a car grabs her, and then he runs off. Bam. But I feel like they didn't have enough on the other end to make it strong because I feel like there was a lot of bullshit a lot of bullshit. I call bullshit on a lot of the Maggie, Sasha, Bob storyline. There was just
Sasha, such a douche.
but it seems like she was a douche for story reasons because they needed someone to be a douche to have that scene with Maggie at the end. It
Right.
just
Well, otherwise it's just them walking down the tracks.
exactly. But it seemed like it was false created drama. Like she really okay. Let's get into it quick because we go from there to the camp where we see the three of them talking about what they should do next. And I believe they find the railroad signs to Terminus as they're walking down the track. And Maggie's like, "That's perfect. Glenn would know that I would know to think about Ferris going to 31 Flavors last night. No, would
Right.
know that I would go to Terminus because he would realize that." He's smart enough to figure that out. And I agree. I agree with her logic. And Bob is like, that makes sense. Let's go down to Terminus. This makes perfect sense. And Bob's smiling this whole episode. Big fucking shit-eating grin on Bob's face the whole episode. Because we realize how... And it didn't connect to me till he had the conversation with Sasha later, but it makes sense why they showed that in the beginning, to show how down he was after losing two groups and being the last survivor. The whole prison situation that happened, he was happy anybody survived. He was happy that he was with Maggie and Sasha. He was like, I got two people. This is the best deal ever. This worked out. He was thinking positively. He's like, if everyone didn't die, everyone's probably alive, which was a good thought. But anyways, Maggie's like, we should go to Terminus. And for some reason, as Joe put it, Sasha's being a douche, and she's like, I don't think so. I think this is a stupid idea. We shouldn't do this. I don't have any rational reason why I think this is a stupid idea. But
trying to set up camp in a random building in a random town
okay, and I feel like
really know is just as dangerous as continuing to walk. You don't even know who else is going to be in that town 2 buildings away who's going to see you and say, I'm going to go get all their stuff. You have no idea about this random town you walk up in. To try to set up shop there and to try to live there is not the smartest, safest thing either.
No, absolutely. Not to mention, I feel like we need to make a point, check mark here in the story, that she points out that it's a random town and a random place. And this connects to another moment where we're flashing right over to Maggie's gone, she's off hunting or looking for stuff, or forget what they say Maggie's doing. And Sasha and Bob are at the camp alone where she's like, listen, I know you want to go with Maggie and I was outvoted, but we can't do this. And this is where she says the stuff that Joe just said. Oh, we should find some abandoned building in a random town in the attic somewhere and just live and hide, and that's what we should do. And it just seemed like this was too perfect. And I feel like it's important because it says later that Maggie was listening to this, because they wake up the next morning and we see that Maggie wrote a note. Who has the best penmanship in the whole zombie apocalypse? She can write. She has very if we're talking about the council, she was probably the secretary of the council because she has some really good penmanship, and we see this several times in the episode. And she writes them a note. I know you guys don't want to come with me. I'm on my own. Go on your own. And I went to go find Glenn. And Bob's like, screw this. I'm going after her. We can catch her. She's going to stay on the tracks. I'm going after her. And then what's her name? Sasha's like, no, this is our perfect opportunity. She gave us our out. Let's take her up on this out. Amen. Let's go. Let's go to this random building in some random town somewhere that I don't know where I'm going. But let's do this. Let's do this. And Bob's like, no, I'm going. I'm going after her. And they walk down the tracks, and Bob's chasing after her. And we counter this with Maggie. We see Maggie in this moment where she looks kind of surreal and weird. It's kind of like one of those heady visual moments that The Walking Dead's been doing this season. And it flashes to her going crazy and killing a zombie that's walking up and reaching in the zombie's belly and kind of like going through the zombie belly. And it goes to commercial break there. My initial thought was she looking for Glenn? Like, was she looking inside the zombie's belly for Glenn? And I'm thinking, I know Glenn's small. I know he's
small, but he's not that small.
Exactly. That was my thought. He's small, but he's not that small. But no, we come back from the break, and we see Sasha and Bob, and we see that Maggie's writing on all the Terminus signs, come this way. Or
next to it, right.
Yeah, Glenn, I'm in Terminus. Go to Terminus. Blah, blah, blah.
Which begs the question, why haven't... You would figure a lot of people would have... Like, anybody who's been seeing these signs going that way would have been leaving directions for other loved ones, like message boards.
I feel like this is important, too, because Stephanie said something like this during the episode. She's like, wow, this must have been a huge undertaking going out there to put all those signs at all the
maps.
Stops and maps. Who's doing this? I mean, is it the government? Is it a governor-type person that's trying to do some evil stuff and getting, like, a people mine or something, to mine resources? I mean, who knows what's going on here? Or is it on the up and up? Who knows? And also, we'll say one last thing about the Daryl storyline. It's not all of our characters except for Glenn, but we see Glenn at the end seeing the sign, seeing a not one of Maggie's signs, just seeing the map. All of our characters.
He could be. He's pretty far away. We don't know exactly how far away, but
we know that
spider web out. He could be on the other side of one of those maps from where Maggie is.
But we do know that all of our characters now, by the end of this episode, have seen the maps to Terminus. Every single one of our main characters has seen the sign. It is in one way or another on their way to Terminus. And
except Daryl and Beth.
Oh yeah, except for Daryl and Beth. But what
tell me you didn't think he was going to see one of the signs or see them walking up the tracks when he was sitting in the middle of that crossroad.
That's exactly why I brought that up too. Thanks for reminding me. Because how long is it before Daryl's new group of Hale's men see those signs, or have they seen them already? I mean, they're walking in the same area. They're going to head down there too. And is there defenses there to stop against butthead assholes like these guys? I mean, who knows what's going on at Terminus? And again, I'm not spoiling myself for Terminus. I'm waiting for the show for this. I'm not going to look ahead in the comics. I don't want to be spoiled on this one. I ruined myself for Game of Thrones. I had to look ahead. I couldn't help myself.
I read the books. I read all the books.
I listened to all the books on tape. I couldn't help myself.
You did?
Yeah, I listened to the books on tape. I'm pretty caught up.
Nice.
But
nice.
We'll talk about that later. So we go back with the Sasha and Daryl stuff. I mean, the Sasha and Bob stuff. So Sasha and Bob find Maggie's sign, and this is when they sort of have their breakdown where they're like, she's like, listen, I'm not going any further. I'm not going after this crazy girl. Look right over there. Look right over there at that random town right there. Look at that building up there. That's perfect. Let's go there. Let's live there. And Bob's like, no, I'm going after her. And I guess this is it. And then he kisses her. And then they separate. So, okay, Bob, you care more about Maggie instead of the girl you want to bang. And then Sasha...
Yep, that was kind of weird to me, too. Like, I think he was thinking, though, it's not about... It wasn't necessarily about picking one over the other as much as it was about picking Hope and picking the rest of the group.
Right, I agree with you on there. I think he was thinking that Maggie is leading to this bigger group. The more people, the better, because he knows what it's like to be alone. But that being said, I feel like he gave up a little easy on making her come with him, and we treaded over this a little bit. He calls her out on her shit and goes, why do you think that Tyrese is dead? Are you afraid? Are you afraid? And that was supposed to be her motivation in the episode, that she was supposed to be afraid, that she didn't want to find out that Tyrese was dead. But
that's bullshit.
That's a lot of bullshit. I'm sorry if I'm using you as an example because you're the closest thing. You and Nick are probably the closest thing to brothers I have. So, or my cousins.
Until I see your zombie body walking, you're not dead.
Exactly. Or even if you are dead, I want to know. I want to travel. I'm not afraid of of finding out. And even if it's Stephanie or in your case Katie, I don't think we'd be afraid of finding out the truth. We'd want to find out the truth no matter what. It just
especially a year and a half deep after already having so much loss and camps go down.
Yeah, it's just a lot of bullshit. No. A lot of bullshit, a lot of convenience, again, just to, in my mind, convenience so we could have some drama in this moment, because Joe's right. Other than that, it's just like, hi-ho, we're walking down the track, and that's all their storyline would be, because ultimately that's where it ends up. Right. So Sasha goes off. Sasha and Bob separate because Bob chooses Maggie over Sasha for some reason. And Sasha and Bob separate, and
right, because here's the bottom line with that. It's like, we can't separate, we can't be alone, we got to stick together. So Maggie ditches them, right? So by him leaving Sasha, he's making all three of them alone.
Exactly.
What he should have done was say, okay, I can't leave you either, but he should have stayed and continued to try to talk her into saying, we can't stay here. We're going to die in this building. This town isn't clear. We can't fortify. It's just the two of us.
Yeah.
You know, like...
Let's get the hell out of here, idiot. Yeah, it's just one of those situations that just seemed stupid for the point of like television situation. That's what it seemed to me at some level. And especially when we get to what happens next, which really pissed me off because it just seemed stupid. And so we see Sasha go off to her loft apartment, and I mentioned this earlier. I was like, oh, my first thought was, here comes Sasha's life of being Morgan.
Yep.
And we're gonna come back here at some point in a couple episodes, and she's gonna be going batshit crazy or something. And she looks out the window, and she sees a girl lying on the ground, and it's Maggie lying on the ground, and to me looking dead or something. She's just lying there, and Sasha
sleeping or something.
Sleeping or something. And I mean, apparently after the fact, we find out that she's doing that because she was hiding from zombies, but that works. You can just hide like that from zombies. Can't they smell you? Haven't we established that the zombies can smell you? And that's why Michonne carries the pets, or why Glenn and Rick in the second episode covered themselves in zombie guts. She can't just hide there like that. And then earlier in this episode too, Bob's like hiding behind a tree with like an army of zombies walking past him. It just seems like the zombie rules are all over the place sometimes. But
it does.
Whatever.
Yeah, it does.
So in that moment, she looks out the window and sees Maggie there, and we see it's Maggie, and the window crashes out, and she runs out and starts trying to save Maggie. And for a moment there, going to commercial break, I don't know if it was on purpose, but it seemed like it looked like Maggie could have been a walker. And I mean, it just flashed to a similar looking walker to Maggie, and it made it be like, whoa! And the second time they've done something like that in an episode, they did something like that last week too, with making something look like something else that it wasn't. So we get at the end of this part, Maggie and Sasha beating off a bunch of zombies. Word choice. Beating off a bunch of zombies, and some cool stuff with Maggie. Maggie uses a big sign as a battle axe. I thought that was really awesome. The battle axe sign. And then they have this conversation, and this is one of the things that pissed me off. Joe, you still there? I think we might have temporarily lost Joe. And keep losing myself a little bit, too. Signal's tough today for whatever reason. So I lost Joe. Joe should be coming back in here at some point. So yeah, what pissed me off in this part a little bit is the whole Maggie and you froze. You froze. Leave, and I'll re-invite. So the whole part with Maggie and Sasha there, Maggie's basically like, oh, listen, I was listening to your conversation. I know that you think Glenn's dead. I know that you don't want to go any further. I understand all that. And I knew that you would go to some random place like this, and I was waiting outside for you. She said something like that, and it just made no freaking sense. It was stupid. It just seemed like it was again set up just for drama to be like Maggie's in the right place at the right time. I feel like it didn't balance out. It was weird to me, very weird. that they were trying to pull that off. That they were trying to make it seem like she went there because she needs Sasha, and she needs to go out of her way to bring Sasha into the fold, and yada 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 yada. That just seemed like a lot of hooey to me, a whole bunch of hooey. And then after that, they go, "Hey, let's walk down the road and find Bob, because Bob's probably only a few feet in front of us." And it was that easy. They just walked down the street and they found Bob. And then the three of them walked off into the sunset together. La 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 la. And that was the end of the episode. Oh wait, we saw one moment where we saw Glenn. We saw Glenn pop in for a second, and at the end, and see the sign for Terminus. And Joe and I talked about that already. So that is what happened. And I'm going to wait 1 second to see if Joe's going to come back in, because I want to talk to him about that end part with Maggie. But next week, I'll talk a little bit about next week. We got Joe coming back in here. And I'll talk a little bit about next week. Joe, can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome. Okay, what I was saying at the end, you froze for a second. What I was saying about the end, so Sasha runs down, and then they both beat the shit out of all the zombies with the awesome battle axe, and it's a cool scene. But I did not like the conversation that Maggie and Sasha had afterwards. Not the fact that Maggie was listening and decided to leave. She said something along the lines of, "I knew you would go here, so that's why I was waiting outside there, because I need you." Like, how did Maggie know what building to find her in?
No. That wasn't exactly it. She said she had gone to go get a walker to make another sign.
I heard that, yeah, I remember that. But then she said something after the fact about...
Well, yeah, she said after she got a lot more zombies than she bargained for, so she had to fight them all. I think she was on the ground resting because she was so tired. Like, her last blow was struck there, and she ended up falling down. So it wasn't that she knew this girl was going to be there. That just was coincidence.
Okay, so she was basically saying, "See, I need you. You saved me in this situation. I needed you, and you happen to be in the right place or right time." Okay, then that was too much of a freaking coincidence that Sasha chose that freaking building to go in. Okay, so it's a different kind of problem, but it's still a problem. It's just, oh, that happened to be the building, and that happened to be the right moment as the zombies are walking over to a sleeping Maggie and about to eat her, so that the glass broke. It was just, again, as I said before, this section was a little convenient for a sense of drama. Otherwise, it would have just been the three of them walking down the train track. Because after that conversation, they're like, "Hey, let's just go catch up to Bob." And then again,
I would have rather just had like flashes of them three walking down the train tracks for 2 or 3 episodes, and made all this kind of little drama crap happen with those kids, because those kids are dumb enough to be like, "I just want to stay, I don't want to keep going," kind of, you know.
I think next week is going to be our kids. It looks from our previews, it looks like next week's going to be the kids doing crazy things episode. And I agree. I think you treaded upon it earlier. I think this episode, or with them, it could have been stronger. It could have even been just them around the train tracks making the decision of whether Terminus is the right place to go. Terminus is the right place to go. In just a lot more of the fog scene in the episode, and have this just been like a 15-minute conversation that they had where they decided to vote on it, and maybe Sasha just been like, "We don't know what kind of people this is. Remember the governor?" She could have used that rationale rather than her stupid rationale. Like, "We don't know. This could just be another governor situation. You want to get involved in that?"
Right.
She didn't say anything about that. She didn't even make mention of that. And her and Tyrese were involved in that firsthand in there, inside, being manipulated by the governor into thinking these people were enemies. It just seemed a little convenient to get it right back to the point. And then I started thinking maybe this was all a setup just so we could find Bob dead at the end. And it would be a good parallel to the beginning of the episode where he's alone and we see what happens. Because Bob makes a reference to bad things happen when you're alone, and ultimately with them separating, he was the only one alone. So I was like, oh, okay, he's going to be alone, and we're going to find him dead at the end, and that's a good parallel to that. I mean, I'm glad he's not dead because I like the character better than Sasha. I like him a lot better than Sasha, and I like him a lot better than a couple of the other characters that got a little attention. I like him better than Beth as well, but it just seems like I don't know, that the three of their storyline was a lot of convenient hooey for me. Just a little bit of convenient hooey.
It was filler, it was fluff. Yeah. It wasn't that great.
But the episode as a whole, I feel like again, I like what they're doing with the adding character depth, because I feel like ultimately we were dealing with in the first, especially in the last 2 seasons, we were dealing with a lot of cardboard cutout characters, and what the last bunch of episodes have done is really rounded out all of our characters, including Rick and Michonne, who Michonne specifically, but I mean even Rick and Carl, who were main characters and kind of had depth to begin with, are really rounding out them as full characters. And I do agree that we need these kind of episodes to care about these people. My fear.
We also, not only do we get the character, but we get rounded off relationships. We finally get to see Ty, chilling with Carol. We get to see Maggie making a friend in Sasha. We get to see Glenn's making these new relationships with these other guys. Beth and Daryl are getting to know each other, 2 completely polar opposites who might not have even said 2 words to each other this whole time. I guess I just
fear from the regular watchers of the show that watch this for the action are going to get a little bogged down on this and be harkened back to the nightmare that was season 2 and on the farm and think about it, things like that. But I do think that all of this will be for good reason. I think sometimes you need filler episodes in a season to move along the plot, and I think that's what this episode was. It was a good filler episode that needed to move everybody to the point that everybody's heading to Terminus now.
Yes.
At this point, that all of our, except for Daryl and Beth, but I have a feeling somewhere in the next episode we're going to see Daryl and his new little group see the signs for Terminus, and who knows where the hell Beth's heading. She could be heading there as well.
Well, we do know that this time Daryl won't give up trying to find her, he did trying to find the governor.
Absolutely, or we know that we're going to see a little bit more of Daryl, like when he was searching for Sophia Daryl.
Yep.
Of that, crazy, I'm looking for you, Daryl. So, anyways, Joe, thank you for joining in. Thank you for making this work on a Monday afternoon. This is a little different than normal. Next week, whoops, let me turn down the music a little bit. Next week, I will be live from Puerto Rico on Sunday night after the Walking Dead episode. Theoretically, we're going to attempt to do this. We're going to attempt to do the Puerto Rico thing.
Live for international Talking Dead recap.
Exactly. Who knows, we might deal with really suspect internet at the hotel. We'll deal with that as it comes, but we'll do our best to go live, and we'll be dealing with a different...
Do they air Walking Dead down there?
I'm assuming they do. They better. That's another situation we might have to deal with. But I'm assuming it's this country. Puerto Rico's this country. So.
No, it's another country. It's a territory.
Oh, whatever. I'm assuming the hotel will have AMC. We're hoping here. So Joe and I will be communication. If not, we'll do a double episode next week. Or in 2 weeks, and catch up that way. So either way, we'll be getting at you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into this week's Walking Dead recap. I'm Phil, the Issues Guy. This is Joe, my host below me, my co-host below me. You can check out all my podcasts and news articles at issuesprogram.com. If you're a fan of streaming video games, please check me out on Twitch at the Couchmasters, _Couchmasters. Joe, I hacked my Wii. I have pretty much every SNES and Super Nintendo and regular Nintendo game and all these other games and access to. You're going to have to come by for a video game night, and we're going to do some streaming.
Nice. Got to get the video game night soon.
Oh, yeah, next video game night's going to be insane. I have, so many games. It's,
nice.
Insane. So, everybody, check that out as well. And if you got any any questions to igotissuesman@gmail.com, or you can leave a voicemail if you have any comments along the way. If you made it this far, let us know at 781-990-8509. Everybody, again, have a great week, and thank you very much. Goodbye.
Peace.